All right, Steve Deace, Michigan Podcast, joining us to talk Big Ten football and obviously the Wolverines taking on the Wisconsin Badgers. Your thoughts about the college football playoff rankings?
I think there's been way too much controversy this week about Clemson being number 2. We're not deciding this right now. To me, the time for controversy is when we get to the end. Okay, so there's plenty of time to play this out. You look at what happened last week with the carnage we had with the 3 top 10 teams, or 3 games of top 10 teams playing each other, and several other games with ranked teams on the road. And already we went from we were all having a cow, we were birthing bovines, and Wisconsin was going to go 12-13-0, and that's not going to happen now. With where they're at now, and since Miami and Clemson have to play each other, if Wisconsin goes 13-0, they will be in the playoff, which means every one of us that did that show last week all wasted our time, as well as every listener and viewer. Okay, so everybody having a cow, birthing bovines as we speak about Clemson being number 2, you're wasting yourself and your viewer and your listeners' time this week. Although as a talk show host myself, I understand sometimes you just got to kill the airtime. I get that. And that's really what the debate is. They have the right 4 teams. I don't think that's even debatable. It doesn't really matter what the order is until we get down to the end. And then it doesn't really matter who's 2 or 3. All that changes is which uniforms they wear. So if you think, well, this team ought to be number 2, Miami should have been 2 instead of 3. Well, all that would mean is they get to decide if they were 2, they get to decide the uniform they want to wear. If not, they'll be wearing the other one. That's all that matters. Let's just wait and get to the end and watch it play out. Enjoy the journey. We only get 14 of these Saturdays every year. And then we have, 9 months after this of a long, grueling, harsh off season to contemplate, overanalyze, and pontificate. And already half of the controversy we were talking about last week, Mark's already taken care of itself.
Overanalyze, which we both like to do, and it's fun, and that's why people are watching us. So the one probable legitimate controversy in this at the conclusion, not right now, is what we were anticipating with Alabama, Georgia. So it's only slightly altered. And now it also exists in the ACC. And you know what I'm leading to.
Right.
Clemson beats Miami in a quote-unquote classic game, a 31-28 type game. And Georgia defeats Alabama in the same fashion. So you have what a lot of people would consider to be the 4 best teams in 2 conferences. I don't believe that we truly know who the best teams are. I love when people make the statement, just select the 4 best teams. Well, if we knew who the 4 best teams were, then we would obviously make that selection. We don't know that. So you got to go on the resume, in my opinion. And that's why I look at the resume first and foremost. But if you've got that set up, do you believe that this committee is going to select a second-place team from one or both of those leagues over a 2-loss Big Ten or Big 12 champion or Pac-12 champion?
I think you have to show me who's the Big Ten, Pac-12, Big 12 champion. You have to give me a team, and then you have to tell me who the other team is.
Okay.
I think we can't do it as a standalone product. We got to look at it in relationship to other things. I think a scenario that I think is going to happen.
Yep.
Is I think you're going to see Auburn beat Alabama here next week.
Okay.
I think they get them at home. Alabama's very beat up on defense. We are now seeing, I told you in the preseason, I thought Jared Stidham would be the most impact newcomer in college football. It took a while, but you're starting to see it now. And what he brings so that you can't just stuff the box and play Auburn in a phone booth. They have the defense. They have the running game. Look what they did against Georgia with Petway out, so they had to have Kerryon Johnson carry the entire load. Now you throw in someone that can force the ball down the field, make you play straight up, make you take the safety out of the box, which is a big part of Alabama's odd and even safety play with what they do defensively. And now you have to play them straight up. And he's not a great runner. He's not Nick Marshall, but he's good enough, too, that if you let him go, he can just scramble for 7-8 yards and a first down on a repeated basis. I think that's going to be a very tough matchup for Alabama. So I think if you take Auburn, let's say they beat Alabama, and then you go to a rematch with Auburn and Georgia, 2 rivals, and one team blistered the other one. I think that's a huge revenge spot for Georgia, and I think they win. That's how I think the SEC is actually going to end up. And that's why I think we just have to wait and see how it plays out. There's a few things I'm certain of. That if any of the teams currently in the top 5 win out, they're going to be in. I think there's no question about that. So if any of the teams in the current top 5 win out, especially because 2 of them will play each other in an ACC championship game, if any of the 2 of the top 5 win out, then they're in. If you don't win out, if you have more than 1 loss, if you didn't win your league, then I think it's impossible to say if you aren't selected, you got screwed. Because at that point, you took the matter out of your hands and put it into the subjective hands of the committee. And so there are no victims at that point. You didn't take care of your own business. Blanche Dubois had to get by on the kindness of strangers. So you take whatever you can get at that moment, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, the whole ball of wax is in the committee's hands. So let me give you this, because I completely respect your initial response, because I make it multiple times a day, because I'm sure you're asked the same similar questions as I am to my YouTube channel. And that's, what if this happens, Mark? What would you do if this happens? What's the committee going to do? And I have to say, you got to give me context of other conferences. You just can't say, if that happens in that conference, what's going to happen? It's a full deal involving 5 conferences. Okay. So the likely scenario that gets messy is that Georgia defeats Alabama, close game. Clemson defeats Miami, close game. Ohio State runs the table and wins the Big Ten championship. Let's say Oklahoma runs the table. They've got their 1 loss. They're safe. Then what happens? Because then you're comparing a 2-loss Big Ten champion versus teams that are considered to be near the best in the country, especially Alabama as a 1 seed going into the SEC championship game. You know, all hell would break loose if Alabama tumbles from number 1 to number 5 just because they lost to a very good Georgia team 31-30.
Well, I think that scenario is not as difficult as you think, because there's 2 factors here, or several factors. The brand factor is canceled out, because we're really comparing Alabama and Ohio State, right? In your scenario, that's really what we're comparing? Really? Okay.
Yes.
So the brand factor, you had the brand factor 3 years ago with Ohio State versus, Baylor and TCU. Well, the brand factor out the window, Urban Ohio State, Saban Alabama, brand factor is a non-entity.
Which,
right?
by the way, shouldn't matter, but you're right. Go ahead.
So since the brand factor's gone, now it's just about football. The problem Ohio State has is it's not just that it's lost to Oklahoma. It's that that in your scenario, it won a league that had 1 quality non-conference win among 14 teams. And that's Iowa winning at Iowa State in overtime. That's the only quality non-conference win the entire conference has. So I know that Joe Tessitore is throwing this stat out. Well, they've got more Power 5 wins than any other league. Well, that's because it's a 14-team league that plays 9 games, Mark. That's why most of them are against each other. Okay, so and I'm a Big Ten guy, but the numbers.
So those are not out of conference Power 5 wins that he's stating.
Well, okay, so it's Michigan over Florida, who's terrible. It's Pitt. It's Penn State over Pitt, who's terrible.
So Ohio State over Army.
Non-conference win the whole league has. The whole league has. Because I don't count Maryland and Texas anymore, because Maryland's not the same team now. They're down to their 5th-string quarterback.
Oh, you still have to count that.
The only quality non-conference win the whole league has is Iowa over Iowa State. So the other issue Ohio State has, I think it's easy to leave them behind subconsciously, because you did them a solid last year putting them in without winning their league over the team that beat them to win the division in Penn State. So I think every intangible goes against Ohio State in that factor. I don't think it'd be that difficult of a call really at all. I think Alabama would go.
Okay, so we would not honor a conference champion, and we would have 2 leagues out of it.
Honor a Big Ten conference champion with 2 losses last year. Just did that last year.
We still gave the league representation, and that's my fault that's my issue with the entire setup, is that we have to eliminate a league right out of the gate.
Oh, that's what I love about it. That's what I love about it. I think it's the perfect system. I think they will go to 8 because of the money. They need it, but they don't need it. They're going to claim it. But it's a terrible move for the regular season, because we have playoff games and everything right now. It further dilutes the bowl games. I predicted when we went to the playoff, which I was okay with, but it would eventually do to the bowls what the NCAA tournament has eventually did to the NIT. And the more teams you add to the playoff, the worse it will get. But they will eventually go to 8. But the system they have right now, in my view, is perfect, because it gives us some finality. I mean, a lot of the semifinal games that have been played, so far actually haven't even been competitive. The one I can think of that was really competitive was when Ohio State upset Alabama.
Yes.
But most of the semifinal games
They've been awful.
aren't that competitive.
You're right.